For the Glory is proudly powered by Mullaney Dairies. Hello and welcome back to another episode of For the Glory, an athlete empowerment production series brought to you by the Wattle Nest. My name is Rachel Condos Fields and I am excited to introduce you to some more Australian great sporting talent as we share their stories, celebrate their success and embrace the power of sport as a true connector amongst our community. Joining me at the desk again today is Australian track and field athlete and For the Glory co-host Nana Awalsu. Welcome back, Nana.
Thank you for having me. We've got a great story in store.
We have a dreamer with us today, a rising superstar Australian representative diver, Laura Hingston. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
As are we.
No, thank you for being here, Laura. Now, how did your diving journey begin? 10-metre diving platform, why did you choose that discipline?
So before I was actually a gymnast, so for me the handstand dive was actually what interested me for platform. Believe it or not, I was actually terrified of heights, so it was a little bit surprising that I chose the 10 metre, but I really wanted to do the handstand dive and I knew that would be my favourite.
You talk about gymnastics. Why didn't you go through that to your Olympic journey?
Yeah, so when I was 5 years old, I always thought, I watched the 2000 Olympics and I always thought that I was going to be an Olympian as a gymnast. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case because I had back surgery when I was 15 years old. And during that time, I actually grew 10 centimetres. So as you can imagine, when I stood up, I was quite tall. Unfortunately, my coaches at the time saw that I was a bit too tall and pretty much I wasn't able to go back to gymnastics. And I was lucky enough to talent transfer through the Victorian Institute of Sport. And I looked at aerial skiing, diving and pole vault. I tried diving first and I absolutely loved it. And I didn't even bother with the other two. So haven't looked back. It's always been the same dream for me. But yeah, now I'm doing diving.
Wow, you talked about the back surgery, which is news to me. I was aware of your bit of misfortune and bad luck with a surgery recently that's put you back. So can you tell us a little bit about that? And gee, I take my hat off to you, the adversity you've overcome.
As in my recent injury?
Yes,
oh,
yes.
So I didn't actually, I was lucky I didn't have to have surgery, but I did suffer from a 10 centimetre tricep tear on my left arm, which just happened from diving. It was from hitting the water wrong, and we kept training on it. We were so close to the Olympic trials, and so we just kept pushing. Unfortunately, with any muscle tear, it actually just continues to get bigger and bigger. By the time I got to the Olympic trials, my arm was hard. I could hardly use my arm, so when I would enter the water, my arm would actually collapse and hit me in the face. So I did the prelim, and unfortunately, I ended up getting medically withdrawn. So it's been a bit of a process back. It's been, we're only now just starting to see that my arm is actually functioning properly. So it's been almost 18 months and it's been a lot of rehab and I've been working really closely with my team. Unfortunately, I had denervation in my arm. So basically that's what caused a lot of the issues and we've just pretty much had to persist and keep doing all my rehab and keep strengthening that tricep until those nerves wake up. And I think we are there, so.
We have got our fingers crossed for you. What does that recovery journey look like, both physically and mentally?
Yeah, physically I was in the gym every day, pretty much with my strength and conditioning coach and my physio. I worked really closely with them and they were amazing at the Victorian Institute of Sport and I couldn't have done it without them. We worked really closely on all the different types of strength exercises to challenge the muscle. But mentally, if I'm honest, it was probably one of the toughest injuries I've ever had. Because it was to do with nerves, we actually didn't know when it was going to get better. It wasn't a classic, I mean, every injury is tough, but with nerves, you don't know. They told me eventually my nerves would wake up and that denervation would go, but we didn't know, was it going to be 12 months? Was it going to be 2 years? We had no idea. So for me, being an athlete, knowing that I am a little bit older, I don't have 10 years left in my career, every day counts for me at this stage. So that was really tough, just the waiting game and just having to just try and stay positive and know, okay, like this will work out, but when? We don't know.
Nana, I know you can relate to that because you're nursing, going through a recovery process yourself from an injury.
No, hats off to you. I know being an athlete that coming back from an injury mentally as well as physically can be really straining. I know that you started gymnastics at 8 and you also started diving later in your career. Do you think that was a positive or a negative impact into the way your career turned out?
I think for me, starting diving at 18 was definitely tough. I had gone from a senior international gymnast and then going to the bottom of diving. I was 18 years old and I was training with 11-year-olds. So as you can imagine, that's pretty humbling. And to be honest, they were actually better than me. So I couldn't land on my head to begin with, which is a crucial element of diving. And I ended up being black and blue. I had bruises all over me for the first month. So I ended up getting the nickname Bruiser because I just couldn't land on my head. So yeah, it was a very humbling experience. I think coming into a sport late though, at 18, I had a lot of skills that I could bring with me, a lot of the mental skills that I learned from gymnastics that really helped with the quick transition from gymnastics to diving. And I was able to progress into that senior role in diving very quickly because of all those skills that I had from gymnastics.
Now that you see the light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to rehab, what are your goals for the next couple of months and years?
Stay healthy.
That's always a tough one being an athlete.
That's a big one. For me, the biggest goal is to get back onto this Olympic journey. So we've got World Championships this year, which I hope to make the team. Only 2 people go in my event, so it's pretty cutthroat. And that's the first Olympic qualifier. So for me to make that team, it's just really important for me to get back up on that international stage. I haven't been able to compete on the world stage for a couple of years because of COVID and because of the injuries. So I'm pretty keen to get back out there and just start on that Olympic journey and just tick off the goals heading into next year, going into that Olympic trial.
How does the qualification period for World Champs begin and what do you have to do to qualify?
Yeah, so for diving, it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty black and white. We have one competition and that's 6 weeks out from the World Champs, and whoever is first and second from that competition goes. So it's a cumulative score, and from the prelim, semi and the final, and the top 2 go.
And how does a training week look like that leading into a World Champs?
Yeah, it's pretty full on. We train around 10 sessions a week and I do quite a few other sessions outside of that, Pilates and yoga, just the little 1%ers, the recovery sessions, because everyone at the top is talented. So for me, it's about trying to get that edge over my competitors and looking after my body, and I find that Pilates and yoga are really helpful in that. But yeah, we train pretty much twice a day, 5 hours a day, in a mixture of diving, dry land into pits, on trampolines, and also in the gym.
I train 6 times a week and I'm complaining and you're doing 10.
And
wow,
the real incredible thing here is despite that training schedule, I know that giving back to the community is a high priority for you, and you're also studying. Tell us a little bit about both.
Yes, I've graduated, so I have a Bachelor of Communications.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And yeah, community is really important to me. My community gives so much to me, and it's really important that I give back. And I'm a really big believer that, you know, we're put on this planet for something, and we're put on this planet not for you. It's about how you can make other people feel. And I really feel fulfilled when I'm giving back to my community. And I'm an ambassador for Little Heroes, which is a foundation in South Australia, actually, and I absolutely love it. So for me, yeah, it's just really important that I'm giving back, and I work pretty closely with the Australian Institute of Sport, and I always put my hand up for any community roles that I can do, and I'm always going out to school kids and inspiring them and trying to get them to dream and follow their heart's desire.
It's great. I know that you're a role model for so many people out there and you're doing some amazing things. When you were growing up, who did you look up to for that inspiration?
Honestly, I looked up to a lot of athletes. For me, it was the Olympic Games. It wasn't necessarily one athlete in particular. I think as I've gotten older, I've really appreciated some of the athletes that I admire now, like Ash Barty, like Lydia Lassila, because I know the work that's gone into pursuing that dream and pursuing the greatness that they've been able to achieve. As a kid, I was just so inspired by the Olympic Games. It was every athlete for me. It didn't matter what they were doing, what sport they were doing. I was just super empowered and super inspired by what they were doing on the world stage, and it just looked like fun. And I knew exactly at 5 years old, that's what I wanted to do.
You can just hear the passion in your voice, the energy and the love for your sport. But what has been your proudest moment to date?
The proudest moment, I think, for me I definitely have a few, but the one that really stands out for me was when I made the World Championships in 2019, and it was in Gwangju in South Korea, and I had just made the semi-final, which was a pretty big deal. It was my first big girl competition, so my first big World Champs, and I remember looking up at my parents in the stands. We're in a massive arena. I got goosebumps when I walked in. It was just an amazing competition to be at. And I'd just seen my name as the names came up on the board, and I made the semi-final. And I looked up at my parents. My mum was crying, my dad looked close to tears, and they were just so happy. And for me, me, that was a really proud moment because they've been super big supporters for my whole sporting career, and I definitely couldn't do it without them and my family. So for me to be able to share that moment with them was really special. So definitely one of my proudest moments.
Well, we'll be crying as well when we see you make your Olympic debut. So
thank
we'll
you,
be
so
here with tears of pride too.
So will I.
Talk about community, and I see a smile on your face when you talk about all the organisations you're a part of. How important do you think community and sport are?
Yeah, I think they're really important. I mean, I'm a big sport fan, so even just taken away from me, I'm a massive sport fan. I absolutely love the tennis. I mean, I love all sport, but I really love the tennis. And I've just spent the last 2 weeks in Melbourne Park watching the Australian Open. And, you know, I think it's really important having that passion for another sport as well, because it brings you closer to other people in the community. It's also a bit of an escapism. We definitely found that during COVID, a lot of people were looking to sport so that they could watch sport instead of watching the news, where things weren't necessarily positive, but they could turn to sport, and that was a little bit of an escape for them. And they could have that chat with their friends about their favourite player, and it was just, yeah, a bit of fresh energy, and like apart from the doom and gloom of what COVID unfortunately presented to us.
I love the passion that comes out of your voice when you're talking about not only your sport but other sports in the community around you.
Thank you.
And if you could look back at a younger version of yourself, what advice would you give back to Laura?
Oh, I'd give her a lot of advice. I think the biggest one for me was when I was little, I was just so determined to make that Olympic dream. And I think there's been a lot of times in my career when I perhaps haven't trained very smart. I pushed through a lot of injuries. I probably didn't speak up when I should have. And I was just so hungry to get that goal that unfortunately I ended up missing more than just the Olympics. I missed, for example, I missed the Com Games last year because of my arm. So for me, it was to really drill into her that to train smarter and not harder. And to really believe in yourself and not be afraid to fail as well, I think.
That's a really important lesson.
Yeah,
really important
I think as you get older, you probably realise a little bit more. But yeah, to realise that failure is actually a stepping stone to success, and just really embracing that, and just having a really childlike mindset of that.
And do you think some of those learnings and the attributes and the characteristics you've developed through sport have helped you transition to your life and your hobbies outside of sport?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think there's a lot of transferable skills for sure. I mean, I'm always learning. There's still a lot to learn. I'm not perfect. We're all human.
And what do you think us athletes can do to help empower sport, and what learnings can we take away about being better leaders in the workforce?
Better leaders, I think, really going back to that point of fear of failure, just really encouraging people to take that leap and to not be afraid to fail. Because I think so many of us, whether it is an ego thing or whether you're worried about what other people think of you, I think there's a little bit of us that we all kind of hold back because we are a little bit scared to fail. But at the end of the day, that's actually where I've learnt the most, and I know that's where we often, like during our toughest moments, that's when I've had my greatest learnings. And my back surgery was one of those. And all my injuries, for that matter, have been really big learnings for me. So.
And I'm sure you'll continue to learn throughout this journey as well, as will we. We're running out of time, but before we wrap up, Nana loves to throw 2 sporting trivia questions at our guests. So we're going to really test you here. Go for it, Nana.
Well, you sound like a really big sports fan, so I'm sure you'll get these 2 questions.
If it's tennis.
Sadly, there's no tennis questions.
Oh, damn.
But my first one for you is, in American football, how many points do you score when you hit a touchdown?
Oh, golly. I actually have no idea.
The answer is 6.
6. Oh, I was going to say 4 or 6.
No, you're close. And in which sport is 180 deemed a perfect score?
180 deemed a perfect score. Well, it's definitely not diving. Archery?
It's actually darts.
Darts.
Close. Very close.
We have run out of time, Laura, but thank you so much on behalf of the Wattle Nest, Nana and I, for joining us today. You've taught us to dream big, and you've taught us that with challenges there's learning opportunities, and we've really, really enjoyed our time with you today. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel, and Nana, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming in and sharing your story. I'm sure so many people will be inspired to hear it through the Wattle Nest.
And we can't wait to see you chase that Olympic dream.
Yes, better get back to training right now, actually.
Well, so we can let Laura go. That does conclude this episode of For the Glory. Be sure to tune in next time, where we continue to discuss and share more stories from our elite athlete world. Until next time, guys, thank you.